recovering from it, they can have a choice. Either they recover from their wounds and heal up and be left with whatever they can and then grow from that, or they become the wound and they literally become the demon that hurt them. So it's a choice.
All right.
We got the fake ranty.
It's okay.
Sorry,
So going back to that first point about free will and purpose and all that, I told my story when I first joined 4 or 5 weeks ago, but I was an atheist my whole life. I'm 34, and after Flat Earth, I basically converted to, not religious, but basically believing in a creator. But my point is, what if the whole good and evil thing? What if the book, the Bible, let's say, is true, and everything else is false? And what if what if the test is, do you believe what the book of the Creator says, or do you believe what man says, scientists say? And so that really hit me hard, thinking, well, this whole time I believe what man said, what science said, and all along it was right there in front of me in this ancient book.
Right.
Yeah, but you're not
Well,
saying that
I'm going to
Bible-
jump in real quick. I'm
the
going to jump in
Bible-
real quick and just add my 2 cents in terms of the Bible is not a scientific book. So Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2 are not records of biology and the creation of the physical cosmos.
It's a good story.
Yeah, but the question
But that's it, it's a story.
Well, no, the question becomes, what is the story intended to communicate? So it's not just a naked story. It's not just bare facts like Goldilocks and the Three Bears or something like that, where it's just seemingly an innocuous story. It has a purpose. It has a message, but the message is not scientific. The world was not created in 6 days scientifically.
How would you know?
But yeah, well,
Such as
not
the
only
turtle
Maybe
and the
it
hare,
was.
and the moon and the sun.
Well, yeah, sure.
Or maybe it was
but-
created in the other type of days, like the same way, like the age of Adam. It's not like a day is not actually a day. It could be like 1,000 years. So
Well, yeah, that's a whole other discussion
Exactly.
that I'm. Well, no, but
Paula?
what I'm saying is that's my field of expertise
Paula?
to a certain extent. But yeah, the days.
Would you like a cup of coffee?
Um,
Like a cup of coffee?
you're
Are you going to town? Okay.
somebody's talking.
yeah, that's Nathan.
Oh, sorry,
talking
that's
to
my
his
bad.
wife.
I'd love some coffee.
Yeah, me too.
As long as it's good.
If there's no creamer, there's no coffee.
But what do you say
But,
to the fact that as far as I can tell, and the research I've done, the Bible is explaining exactly the belief that the flat earthers have. The Earth is flat and circular. Sun and moon rotate around us. The Earth is still. It's in the center. That's from the Bible. So how are you saying that the Bible is just a story? It's a story that we now all pretty much, in some form or fashion, believe.
Yeah, well, the thing that I would say in general, because it's a pretty specific discussion, is that the language that flat earthers, and I've tried to engage people like Rob Skiba and others who are strongly Christian and strongly saying the Bible is flat, or the Bible is a flat earth book, the Bible is a flat earth book. That is a tertiary issue. The Bible is not a flat earth book. It'll talk about the land. It'll talk about stability. It'll talk about the foundations, but it's not intending to communicate flat earth. So while it might speak of a geocentric model where the sun and the moon move and the stars move, that's just phenomenological. The Bible doesn't have a word for east. The Bible's communication of east is the rising of the sun. That's the way the Bible says east. So when you're reading in your English Bible, he came from the east. That's not what it says in the Hebrew. It says he came from the rising of the sun. So it's phenomenological. It's not intending to communicate flat Earth, even though in the English it might be purported to look that way.
The Bible is first how it was translated first, and then how it's interpreted by every single person or different religions. It's about interpretation and how the translation accurate it was, you know.
That too, but also just the formulas for the entire writings and the story are very old, and I think they are so old that in that time there simply had not been developed a plan for the globe yet. So that way of thinking it's not adapted to that way of thinking, like more modern type storytelling. So it's just very old, and thus it's not been adapted to the globe throughout, while it is extremely detailed for the
What
rest. So
I'll what
you
I'll
can't
say,
adapt it.
yeah, what I'll say is this: is that the Bible um, is locally centered around the Fertile Crescent with Israel and Egypt and Babylon and those central localities. That's the focus of the Bible. The Bible's message deals with God's history in dealing with Israel for a certain purpose. So that when you see the word earth in both the Old Testament and the New Testament, that's an interpretation of the word eretz. The word eretz in Hebrew simply means land. It doesn't mean earth, the way that we think of earth, because our idea of earth is not local but global.
Yeah.
And so it's a misconstruence of the. So when it says the earth is immovable or the earth is fixed, it's not talking about the earth. It's talking about the land that it is being specifically referenced, which is Israel. So God's purpose for Israel is immovable. God's purpose for Israel is sure, is steadfast, is established. So all of that to say, the earth is not a global book. I mean, I'm sorry, the Bible is not a global centered book. It's a specifically local, general reference to a geographical location. So,
Are you sure that's only in the case when they're talking about Israel?
well, yeah,
'Cause
you
I
have
think that
to.
Genesis is not really about Israel. So
Well, I'd encourage you to check my podcast out, where I go into some pretty specific discussions in terms of why I think that it is specifically talking about Israel,
only,
based on, yeah,
really.
uh-huh.
So
Yep.
even Genesis and all that, it's only about Israel. It's not about the entire humanity, the start of humanity.
No, that's correct. That's
Wow.
correct.
Okay.
Adam, yeah. So even if you go into the, well, it's the non sequitur show that I did on the discussion of the doctrine of hell, I touched on it a bit because the discussion went that way, where I discussed my understanding of Genesis. But yeah,
That
yeah,
gives a very different perspective on things. If you're saying that like Adam and Eve and all that and paradise only applies to Israel, to a specific location, it almost makes me think like, yeah, so were Adam and Eve then in that case actual Nephilim? They were like new recreations sent out into the world where other human beings they already existed.
right. Yeah, I would say
That
that.
is very bizarre.
Well, where I would diverge from you on that is to call Adam and Eve Nephilim. I think that Adam and Eve are allegorical references to Israel in terms of the progress of.
Allegorical?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Nah,
Okay.
no.
Yeah,
Is your name Travis?
Interesting, though.
Yeah, it is.
Hey, Travis. So let me ask you: do you believe the Earth is flat?
I believe it's observably and demonstrably not spinning and not circular, not globe. Yeah, it's flat.
Do you therefore conclude that if that's true, that there must be a creator or something that created the flat Earth?
Well, I already operate on that presupposition because I'm a Christian of 40 plus years, so I've already had that mindset that we are here as a result of a creator.
So then why is it so absurd to believe that the book called the Bible, for me known as the book of the Creator, that talks about the sun and the moon circling us being stationary in the center of everything? Why is it more phenomenological or allegorical when that is the thing that it seems to be true of? Versus, to me, if it's true, if the Earth is flat and we're the center and we're not moving, there has to be a creator because, and I don't think it's even a presupposition. And part of the reason is because why would they be hiding it, right? They're hiding it. The powers that be, NASA, whoever, they're hiding it for a reason, a very specific reason. Why are they hiding it? There's a book that's 2,000 years old that says it's flat and isn't moving, and then there's NASA that says it's not flat and it is moving. So the book of the Creator, it seems to be right.
Well,
so I just don't understand.
Right, sure.
I
So
don't think that the shape of the Earth is even relevant when it comes to is the Earth created, because I think that life in itself is the biggest proof of creation.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and there's also a PayPal link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by a whole bunch of people. We've got Sleeping Warrior, The Plain Truth, Mark, Jose, I'm Sorry, Chris, CGI Ranty, and Arwin. Good to have you all.
Good afternoon.
I'm sorry, is that George Hattenik?
Say again?
The Bible is not a flat Earth book.
No, that's funny though.
So I'm sorry, is not George Hattenik. I wasn't quite sure. It
No,
could have been.
it's not him.
Could have been.
Gravity,
If only
gravity.
I was.
The Bible is a flat Earth book, but unfortunately, it's also a book. It was also a book on the globe model. It's a book on everything.
It's a book.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to stick through this hour because I've got to get going. But I just want to respond real quick to Chris, and that is that I don't think that it's absurd to talk that way. I grew up understanding, the typical Christian evangelical belief that the Bible teaches that we were created in 6 days and whatnot. But I would say this, that the Bible is as much a flat earth book as it is a book against evolution, so that people like Ken Ham can use Genesis 1 and 2 as proof against evolution. Okay, but that's not what the text itself was intending to do. If you want to do that, it's a tertiary issue. It's not its primary focus. So as long as you know what you're doing and what you're talking about primarily, which is what I was trying to establish with Arwen, is that the allegory of the story is the intention of the original author that we have in our Genesis 1 and 2. Was he writing to combat evolution? Was he writing to establish a flat Earth? No. Can you perhaps use the text that way? Yeah, that's not its intention, but you might get away with it. So
I don't know. Like, even seriously, just look at all the Bible-related books. They're all different authors. So I think it is basically a gathering of works of a group of clerics, and I think that they had different priorities. They have had different agendas, but they basically agreed, and then later on all the materials were managed by central church, and it got all political. But
Arwen, there's a very easy example that you can give to Bible thumpers, and it goes like this. If I was to ask you, who am I describing? And please listen carefully. I am the truth, I am the light, and I am the way. Who did I just describe? Anybody?
God, the creator, the
Well,
Lord
see,
Jesus Christ.
so Jesus Christ, God, creator. Basically, look at it this way. The Bible itself, what is it? Corinthians 4:24 or something, 4:24, says that the angel of light is Satan. Just before Eve bit into the forbidden fruit, it wasn't an apple, but whatever the forbidden fruit was, Satan said, all I offer is the truth, which was one of the bigger lies he ever told. So I am the light and I am the truth. They're Satan. We're talking about Satan. So the way is naturally what the first two are talking about, right?
Well, he's a liar. So
Well,
all right.
yeah,
Well, so since we're
see,
off
the
on
thing
this,
is, like I said, most people, if you ask them who is I am the light, I am the truth, and I am the way, will say Jesus Christ. And that Satanists have actually injected that horse shit into this Bible. And that's what, if you ever want to use examples of Satanists have influenced the Bible heavily, I would not trust everything you get out of it. And they also influenced the Torah, they influenced the Quran. You know, there isn't a single thing. It's since they own all the printing presses, they've been influencing everything. And clerics are not are satanic worshippers in the end. So
yeah.
right,
So just since
okay.
we're off on this rabbit trail a little bit, I'll just interject again. The Bible is not a satanic book per se. What I mean by that is that Satan is not a spiritual metaphysical entity. Satan.
yes, he is.
Okay, listen to what I'm saying and not what I'm not saying. Okay.
Okay,
Agree to disagree. Just listen.
Just like the Bible is not an evolution book, just like the Bible is not a flat Earth book. If there is an entity, a metaphysical spiritual being that you want to call Satan, the Bible is not about him. Okay, so the adversary in the early story of Genesis with Adam and Eve was a serpent. Okay, but that was not a metaphysical spiritual being. It was an allegorical story of an adversary. That's what Satan means. Satan simply means adversary.
Opponent.
Okay, and if my argument is going to stand in terms of Adam and Eve being representational of Israel as a nation, then the serpent is an adversarial person who is intending to lead Israel away from her calling in history.
Yeah,
and that's why
did a great job.
But it's a human representation. So that's why when you get into the New Testament, when John the Baptist is baptizing in the River Jordan, and the leaders come to John the Baptist, and he says, "You snakes, you brood of vipers." He's calling them Satan, but they're human people. So my point is that the Bible, when referring to Satan, the Bible is not talking about a spiritual being. It's talking about people who stand against
the Creator.
Correct.
Well,
Okay.
from how I interpreted it earlier is that the Adam and Eve story is not even in the physical realm. So it's all spirits, basically, in a pre-heaven. And from that came the material manifest of our world. They stepped out of Eden, they became mortal, and everything, all of the burdens of the flesh suddenly became as they are. So in my interpretation, it is basically in the spirit realm. And yeah, in the spirit realm, an animal could definitely speak to you. Not verbally, but psionically. Because there is no words, there is no matter. There's only spirit and spirit communication and intentions. That's how I interpreted that.
That works. I like that, actually.
Yeah, it is the hall of souls. Basically, it is what was before creation, pre-creation.
Before man on this planet, but
yeah, and then Satan, the adversary, the balance good and evil was introduced by the Creator, and then given a place on Earth, on the actual Earth.
All right.
That's how I see it, anyway. But yeah, it's interesting. The other interpretation, it all being about Israel. Who knows? You know what? I think, the more I deal with it, the more I become convinced of it, and that is that the Bible is a multi-dimensional, multi-meaning book of several different layers that just coincide, seem to contrast, but they can practically all be true at the same time. It's just such a complicated thing. There's so much in this book. It's unfathomable.
Yeah, but how much of it is true in the end? If you remember
I think most of it is true.
Well,
from several angles, even though they seem to be contrasting at many points.
Here's the catch: if it was influenced by satanic forces, and you don't know where the influence is, it's basically like listening to the freaking government and believing everything you hear.
No, but it's about learning to distinguish.
Okay.
Isn't like learning the truth and figuring out the world exactly that?
Okay.
Critical thinking. You have to just use your intuition, figure it out, and then you will see. You will.
Yeah, but
you will contrast the.
There's the problem. You were not there. You are simply.
But you can read it.
From who?
You can read it, and then you, just like you would communicate to somebody about something, you would figure it. You would figure it out. You would figure that book out as you figure out a person when you talk to them.
The Christian Bible, written about men 30 to 90 years after the fact of their existence, and none of these men were ever capable of writing anything down on their own. Talk about your oldest game of telephone, guys. You know, I mean, and on top of that, if once proven that it's chock full of lies and satanic influence, how can you go on the fact of believing anything that thing says?
So let me interject. Yeah, let me interject because I think I come at this from a different angle because I was a non-believer my entire life. And Arwen, you said something.
Believe. I'm not saying.
Well, hold on. Yeah, okay. Arwen, you said something interesting earlier that you said the life itself is the proof of creation. Well, keep in mind that's not true for a lot of people. That wasn't true for me for 34 years. It wasn't until I found flat Earth that I then started believing in a creator. So I think that's a really important point for a lot of people. I've online heard of more people being converted from atheists to believers because of flat Earth, and an understanding.
It could be, but for me, it didn't go that way because I was simply going by a designer. I just figured out, okay, life, biology, evolution can't work. A species can't transform into another species just by chance, because the further a species mutates, the less viable it becomes, the less chance it has to survive. And a functional organ can't just mutate gradually over generations from nothing into a functional thing that is as complex as they are. It's physically impossible. And that's just the conclusion that came out of it. Okay, we have been designed. How can that work? Well, I originally believed that, yeah, you know what? Maybe aliens. I didn't know really about flat Earth. I love the concept. So yeah, maybe aliens created us or altered us or something like that, or somehow it was all created at some point. By who? We don't know. The previous group. And it's like an internal creation process. That's how I thought about it then. And yeah, then more came in the flat Earth, and then you figure out, wow, it's all been a giant illusion, and it's all come from the same roots. So then that made like a spiritual creator, a unified God entity, much more likely to me. But yeah, before that time, I still believed in the globe and outer space and all that, and I just knew, like, yeah, life just doesn't work that way. It can't just develop out of nothing. It's physically impossible. Just like it's physically impossible to have a vacuum next to a pressurized system without a container. It's just physically impossible.
Right. But again, keep in mind, the majority of people believe in evolution. I believed in evolution. I thought it made sense. I read books on evolution and still thought it made sense. Again, it was only until I found flat Earth and found that the Genesis chapter 1 describes the creation of the earth, that there's a dome, that the sun and the moon revolve around us, that the earth is still, right? Only then did I realize, wow, that book is right and science and NASA is wrong. What does that mean?
Okay, well, that's your process. It didn't go that way with me.
Taurus says the same thing, Holmes. I got news.
I'm still not convinced there is a dome even out there. So.
Oh, really? Oh, this is good. What do you go for?
Well, I think that space itself could be the container. And spatiality, I think that there's a possibility. It's basically the looping concept, in which the amount of space that Earth resides in is simply limited and looping. And thus, there does not need to be a dome to keep up the pressure. The limited amount of space is self-containing.
Gotcha. Plus, we don't know really.
Is it portals or is it like a treadmill?
No, it's continual. It's not a portal. Or, yeah, well, you know what? It is one giant, it's all a portal. Just one continual open continuum. You move one way, you walk, you come walking in from the other, just like the train man scene at the Matrix. It's just one realm, and yeah, looping.
But this is like another dimension, right?
Go through. It's just continual.
Maybe that's what he meant. This is my realm, and I wrote it and designed it.
Yeah, well, that's my interpretation. And hey, as far as I'm concerned, I even philosophically interpret it that the creator is actually imagining us, that we are like his creations. We are his. We are all in his imagination, and it is real. But he is literally in the overrealm imagining us, and that is how we come into existence in this lower dimension, as it were.
Oh.
But yeah.
That sounds good.
It doesn't exclude the other effects, but I'm definitely a proponent of multidimensionality and different dimensional realms and spirit. The spirit realm, I've been there in my experience, you know. So
I believe that the multi-dimensions is the fact that the plane that we're on is freaking huge and has more than one what we call Earth on it, and that's how maybe when you travel spiritually, you're not traveling far away. Maybe you're just going like next door.
Well, there's no distance really in the spirit realm.
Exactly.
So you just focus and you go there, because there's no physical thing to keep you behind.
Right. You You could be going millions of miles away. You could be going back in time. You could be going forward in time, or you
Yeah.
could be going next door.
But even with our spirits in our physical bodies, the conscious form and everything time bound, even we can do that. Just wake. We don't have to actually have an out of body experience or anything like what I went through to even do that. Because people can just focus
I like
on somebody on the other side of the world and like, yeah, man, I really need to tell you something. And then that person just calls you up right there and then. It happens to me all the freaking time.
I agree. That happens to me all the time as
Yeah,
well.
because your spirit,
yes, that does happen a lot.
Yeah, your spirit is not limited by mass. It just
that has
goes
never
there.
happened to me.
All right. Well, it happens to some more than to others.
Yes. I believe it's because you aren't looking for that. And once you start realizing it, you can't ignore it anymore. It's like, wow, this is crazy because it's been going on. Since I've popped into this whole FE thing about a year and a half ago, I haven't been anywhere. You haven't seen me anywhere other than chats, but more and more just things that you would consider a coincidence, for me 2 years ago are just, I can't ignore it anymore. Like I think of somebody I haven't talked to in over a year about a specific situation I want to talk to him about. He texts me 2 days later, and then he's asking me about that same thing that I was going to call him or ask him about. And it's like, how the hell does this happen? This doesn't just come from nothing all the time and almost anything. Like I'll be sitting there in the car thinking, we're driving, me and my girlfriend, and I'm looking to my right, and I see something, and I'm thinking, oh, shoot, should I hit the brakes? There's somebody pulling out. Should I hit the brakes? And I get so close to saying it that it almost it's like on the edge of my vocals, just right there. And I never said it, but then she turns to me and says, what? What'd you say? I'm like, nothing. Why? She's like, oh, I thought you said something. But I didn't even say anything, and there was no sound for her to think that I said anything. It was just like she could pick that up. It just blows my mind how often things like that happen. And if you don't understand that that's a possibility, you don't realize how often it's actually happening.
Yeah, but it's
crazy.
Humans all life has this skill to use their spirit. All life, all mammal life, even plants, I believe. But yeah, they're just smaller. They're not as elaborate. But we as humans have become distracted by our intellects and our conscious thoughts, as it were, and we've been taught to ignore all these things. But yeah, if you train your spirit and if you train to trust your instinct, there's incredible things you can do with it. And for example, I used to use it a lot when driving a car. When I'm driving a car, I've never had a single accident in my entire life, not even from somebody else, because I would see it coming. I could feel it coming like several seconds before. I was just driving. I usually like to speed up, not too fast, but just don't go the average speed and just move on. And then I would just look ahead at me and see like what cars are there to the right of me. And then I would just know like, oh, that car right over there. I'm going to approach him in about 5 seconds. And that guy or girl is sloppy. And he's just going to cut me off. So I have to be careful when I approach him. I just feel this instantly. And it happens. So I'm prepared for it. And that way it's just, I never get into an accident because I see everything coming. And I have seen like people going completely crazy on the road. And then I know, okay, I need to slow down because there's probably an accident is going to happen further down the road. And then it did.
And to add to that, I would say not always is it, that feeling, that instinctual feeling, not always it, what I say, it's like you're reading what's about to happen, but sometimes you could have like a paranoia, say, I'm going to get cut off because I always get cut off type of thing.
But that's different.
I've heard,
it
is
then you
different.
let the fear in. If you let your fear take a grip on your mind, then it's going to play with you.
Yeah,
and it's going to distract you from your actual instincts. It is just the instinctual response. That's the thing you can trust. If you then draw conclusions from it and let your emotions get in the way, the emotions are disruptive. They will actually screw you over, basically. They are destructive. But your senses and your instinct senses, they are very reliable. And they will tell you beforehand, like, yeah, this is going to happen. And yeah, if you just shouldn't panic over it and just be very rational and plan ahead. Just incorporate it in whatever you're doing, and then it will work. But if you're
I
going to
guess
panic over it, yeah, then you're
yeah,
going to get screwed over.
I guess what my main point was say you're driving and you don't see anything and you're not, waiting for anything to happen. You're not, anticipating anything that you're observing already that's going to happen. But then you think, oh man, I'm probably going to get cut off just because you're thinking it. You in turn will get cut off more is my personal belief about that. Like it's like I always remember a story I heard from Bob like a year ago.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But that's a different concept.
It is
That is
different.
just the feelings that you have inside of you.
I
They
guess
will
I'm just
reflect
describing
back
more of
on the
what we
outside.
have the power to do.
Yeah, but I have it all the time. If I am like in a bad mood or I'm just really worried about something that just happened, and then I go for groceries, then my mood will reflect on how people
Yes.
respond to me. But that's a different concept. That's separate. That's just the atmosphere that you carry in your spirit as you move along and how things will reflect, how things will respond to you. But that's not the same effect as seeing things coming.
No, I agree. I guess I was conflating with, just what we don't realize that we have the power to do or perceive, in a different way than what we're understood, taught to understand through life, through the physical world that we're supposed to be living in, that they say. You know what I mean? It's just more things that fit into, can't quite describe how it works, but we can observe how the things that we, in our mind can do. I can't put the words to it, but you see what I'm
Test it.
saying.
You test it. You
Yeah.
test your spirit, you test your senses. And then you just try to work with them and don't ridicule them, don't ignore them. Just work with them and see
Right.
how they work. Just as a kid, you learn how your taste works, how your hands work, how you can walk. And then later on, you start to use your brain and you learn how to think and figure things out. And then after that, you wisen up and you start to learn how to use your instincts and your spiritual abilities. That's how I see it, in that order. But anyway, yeah, let's move back onto flat Earth because this is very far away.
We could go for hours, I feel like, on this.
Yeah, I love this stuff. I love talking. I used to be talking about this kind of stuff a long time, ever since I was 16, pretty much. I was very much into this kind of stuff.
One thing I want to
Yeah,
say,
go ahead.
Sorry, just to wrap it up, maybe, or whatever. Last thing I'd like to say on this topic is, I think the most fascinating thing for me on the whole religious debate and all that is the vast majority of all people in the world are still religious, still believe in a creator, even though science typically says either there isn't a creator or we were, created out of the Big Bang. And I just find that super fascinating that the people lying, because if you think about it, they are lying, right? If we all believe this is true, if we believe the Earth's flat, we know there are people that know that are lying, and the people that are lying are losing. So from a positive standpoint, I think that's really interesting and all that. And I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah. Well, people know it's just official. Like it is like a corporate or government policy. This is what is supposed to be real. But inside, they have their own feelings about it. And some people just take their religion like a story they like to focus on. And they can just really put themselves behind that story. They can really learn everything about it. But it's basically the story that they like the most. It is the story that they accept on the inside and that they will protect from the official narrative, as it were, from the outside and from other people's opinion. That's how most people deal with it, I think. I don't even think that most people really care that much about what is real and what is not. They just go with the story they prefer the most. Because especially in this age, there is so much freaking information, you know, it never stops. So eventually, yeah, some people just can get oversaturated with information and they just say, okay, I just don't know anymore. I'm never going to find out. I'm just going to go with the story that I like the most. Would you agree?
Possibly. I thought I was going with the story I thought was right. I thought science was right. I thought NASA was right. I thought evolution was right. So
No, but that's because correctness and reality has a priority for you. Doesn't do that with everyone. You know, some people don't mind if there's bullshit in there. If they just like the story, they'll take it. And for us, it's really important that it's real. Because we want the truth. We want to figure it out. But it's a harder path. And not everybody takes the hard road. Some people just like the conveniences of being part of the club. Even though that club is a bunch of liars.
Can we change the topic now? I'm a bit bored.
Yep.
Let's talk about why the ballers don't come in anymore.
So about
Been
any
listening
more?
to different people pass comments, and basically it's because they're all being told by the side not to go in there because they're trying to strangle the show, Nathan. They're trying to stop it from broadcasting and stop people from going in, to stop it from the good word from getting out there that we might not live on a sphere. So it's like, let's just laugh at the ballers then, because they used to come in quite a lot. Now they don't come in quite a lot, but they're now not coming in because they're being told not to. Love it.
Yeah.
Because they don't got shit.
Yeah, I don't mind. It's just like I couldn't have conversations like I've had the last hour if there were ballers in there just trying to ridicule it or whatever, being ballers. So it's nice to have like a comfortable room with people that I just have a certain understanding with, and then get into deep conversations. I love it.
They have seen.
Shout out to Adam.
They have seen this is not a. They are welcome to come in. If they want to, let's say, debate Anthony one-on-one, they can just pick up like, oh, I want Anthony one-on-one. We all shut up. We all mute. You know, we're just here as a placeholders for the trolls not to come in. But if they want Nathan to engage with Nathan or Anthony or Arwin or either one of us, they can just jump in and say like, hey, you know what? I just want to have a conversation with this guy. They can do it. They are welcome.
What they should do is tactically come in, right? Argue in favor of gravity, and then just get Arwin to finish their arguments off and leave, and then nobody would notice that they were leaving. Arwin would finish off the argument for them, and then me and Nathan would be sat here going, "Rah!"
Yeah, you just don't get it, do you? Can't let it go.
Well, I do get it.
No, you don't. No, you don't. You constantly call me a baller just for not accepting that.
I don't call you a baller. I call you an idiot.
Yeah. Well, sorry, but I'm not gonna take some quantum mechanics word based on a false assumption. All right, that now Newtonian mechanics it doesn't work. It's been disproven. Okay, yeah, I don't do that. And just because I can't find direct proof for downward acceleration force doesn't mean that I can't just deduce it without any presupposition that it is there.
They make stuff up.
I know you don't like it, and you're going to talk over me when I explain this, because you always do it every time I talk in chat, and you're in there. You always have to respond immediately. You always have to respond immediately. You just can't handle it.
Open, don't you, Arwin? And now you have no idea what I just said, do you?
Hugs.
Oh, well, maybe you shouldn't talk through me when I'm talking. And then you can just say it.
I'm trying to shut you up when you talk rubbish.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was talking about. So I'm not going to let you shut me up.
Well, I know. That's why I'm talking over you, because you're desperately trying to keep the mic open with you.
Yeah, well, I want to say what I want to say. And if you want me to shut up, well, maybe you should just go away.
No, I want you to prove it. I want you to prove that there is this downward acceleration force that we had a conversation about 2 weeks ago.
I can't scientifically prove it, but I can, without any presuppositions, deduce it very solidly, and I have. And you don't accept it, so it's done.
What ballers do, though, Arwin? Logic.
No, they don't. They don't do anything.
Yeah, they do. They do exactly what
It has nothing to do with matter being attracted to other matter or the bending of space-time. Okay, it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with the shape of the Earth. The only thing it has to do with is with the matter that is in this realm.
Yeah, but you're redefining the term of gravity.
No, I don't use the word gravity. You're using the word gravity. I say downward acceleration force. And you constantly shove the gravity in my mouth like I'm saying it. No, you're saying it. I'm saying downward acceleration force. Okay? So don't shove that word in my mouth and like declare me a baller, like some hypocrite.
Well, you're acting
Stop
like
doing that. Stop slandering me.
Slandering you? Oh,
Yeah, slandering me. You're calling me a baller. And you're shoving words in my mouth that I don't use. Stop
You're not
doing
going to pull the victim card, are you, Arwin?
Yeah. Stop slandering me and stop putting words in my mouth that I don't use.
Stop
calling me a baller. I'm not a baller. So don't be a dick.
Stuff up, then. You can't redefine gravity, dude.
I am not redefining gravity. I'm saying downward
Downward
acceleration
force that nobody else sees.
Yeah, you don't see forces. You apply them.
Well, you know when you
like acceleration, like motion, it will cause force to be applied to matter.
Oh, and if you accelerate from 0 to 60 in a car, you can see that the car is the force. If you accelerate from 0 to 60 out of a plane, you can see that falling is the force.
Hey, was.
That is the force, right?
No, the falling is not the force.
Where's the force?
It is caused by the motion, by the acceleration. It is there. It is applied to matter.
Why can't you call it?
You can measure it. You can measure it by weight. You can measure it by how the density and buoyancy ratio actually manifests within the body that is moving.
Rather than downward acceleration force.
But the downward acceleration force is the stationary standard situation.
The stationary standard situation. That who else uses that phraseology?
That's how I try to explain it. It is just what is. It is when something is not internally motioning, like an object, like a plane, which is the only thing that we can actually test, because we can't move the entire Earth. We can't stop the downward acceleration force as it is applied, as it is there, because it has to be, because otherwise there would be no density and buoyancy. Basically separating the heavy from the light. That only works when a force is applied. Okay, so we can't turn it off. Yeah, so we can't scientifically prove it. So what?
Yeah,
the deduction is there and it's solid and it works.
Arwin, can we not just call it a displacement rather than a downward acceleration force?
It's a force.
It isn't.
It is.
You can't prove it.
I don't care. I don't give a shit. It's a force. Because it works exactly like acceleration.
So if we refer to it as Arwin's downward acceleration force,
you can call it whatever you like. Just don't call it gravity. Don't call me a baller.
If
you don't care, if you don't want to know that, if you don't want to accept it as proof, your problem. It's there. I deduced it. I don't have
disable Arwin.
It's there.
Arwin, you spoke. Let Anthony rebuttal, because you spoke for a lot and you cut Anthony in half sentence.
Yeah. I need to cut
yes, was not was. It's you. Where were we? Arwin. So we'll call it Arwin's downward acceleration force in future then, okay? We won't call it downward acceleration force. We'll call it Arwin's downward acceleration force.
I'll call it damn downward acceleration force.
No, we'll call it Arwin's downward acceleration force.
You know what? You can do whatever you like. You're going to do whatever you like, and you're going to be trolling me for eternity because you're a dick.
I'm reminding people that nobody else
uses a dick.
Phrase but you.
Anthony, you're a dick, and you can't let it go. If you think it's so stupid, then just stay out of it, okay?
No, I can't stay out of it when you're talking.
You can. If you don't believe it, then stay the hell out of it.
There is no such thing as
acceleration. Stop being a dick. Stop getting in my way.
You're confusing people more than.
No, I'm not confusing. I'm explaining it, and people agree with me.
Referring to it as a force,
you just
can't prove it.
On. Is magnetism a force?
In the sense of a force, no. It's an effect. It's like force in the classical mechanical version is basically like motion. That's the only way a force really applies. It's the only way you can measure weight, all of that. So, but yeah, force is like, it all depends on how you approach force, because pressure is also kind of like a force, but
can you detect pressure?
It functions very differently from acceleration like forces.
I think for me, the caveat is it detectable? Magnetism and electromagnetism is detectable. Air pressure or pressure in general is detectable.
Yeah.
Gravity is not detectable. this thing you're calling down.
No, it is. It is deduced. No, it is. It is deducible. It's just just like motion. Motion technically isn't detectable. You can only deduce it from reference frames because something can move within another body that is not moving, and that is how you deduce it. Okay, and then you notice, hey, look, there's pressure actually caused by that force being applied to the matter, rearranging the density buoyancy axis.
But it's detectable.
It's deducible. All the motion acceleration-like forces are deduced. That's how they
work. A radar
work.
gun detects acceleration or motion.
No, it deduces it. Doesn't detect it at all.
You're using that word interestingly.
It deduces it. Just says, oh, look, it's there now. Oh, look, it's at a different distance. We can deduce that over this period of time, it has moved. That's a deduction.
Is it like the deduction that you call the downward acceleration force?
Yeah. Whatever you like, man.
I'll be honest, when Nathan put me up to it.
I don't
No, I didn't. No, I did not.
Anything.
That's a lie.
I don't
didn't
care.
do anything of the sort.
I'm gonna do this.
It's not. It's not a total lie. Nathan just said stimulate some conversation. So I thought, what should I do? And I saw Arwen talking. And I thought I'll just poke Arwen a little bit and see what happens.
So Arwen, does the solution of density, buoyancy, and potential energy doesn't satisfy your downward acceleration force needs?
Density and buoyancy are a side effect. Literally, in the official formulas. Like the little g is in there. Because
that's acceleration, not gravity.
No, density and buoyancy are pressure effects and rearranging of masses, different types of masses rearranging themselves after a force is applied. We can demonstrate this. We can demonstrate this in setups, how that works. It is, density buoyancy aligns itself within a body, within a mass, as forces are being applied.
So if I have a bottle of water sitting on the ground, there's a downward acceleration force being applied to the water, correct?
It's everywhere. It is a constant.
So why isn't the water moving?
Sorry?
Why isn't the water moving when it's on the ground in a bottle?
Why would it? It has nowhere to go.
Well, because there's a force being applied to it.
It's a force being applied to everything. Doesn't matter. It just finds its equilibrium within the pressure systems and within the directions it can go.
Don't say we. I'm saying there is no force being applied to water in a bottle that's on the ground. Thus, it doesn't move.
That's fine. You can take that away if you like, but it's there. It's everywhere because it is what makes density and buoyancy function the way they do.
I just think the example of the vomit comet. So my example of a bottle of water on the ground, there's no force. And if you take that same bottle of water and put it in a vomit comet, there's now a downward acceleration force being applied in the form of acceleration. And the water will then move in the bottle because a force has then been applied.
It's the other way around. It's being compensated. The downward acceleration force is being negated by a downward motion, by an acceleration downward. It's being negated.
Which applies a force on the objects.
It applies a counter force. And thus the effects of density and buoyancy are negated, making matter just free float and not rearrange themselves in the layers in accordance to density.
That isn't right.
It is right.
The object, when it starts falling, that creates, because the object moves, right? You can see that is creating a force downward. But it's the object.
I know I can't prove it. You don't have to bring that up every single discussion.
Hold on, Arwen.
But what I'm saying is, if you get a microphone and you drop it to the floor, the microphone creates a movement, right? The microphone creates a force itself, but there's no force pushing it or pulling it. The microphone creates the movement itself by moving, in the same way that a car creates a force by moving. But to say that there's something pushing it or something pulling it when you can't identify the force is fallacious, Arwen. It's not easy to prove.
It's not fallacious. It's just not scientifically provable. That is all. And when a car moves, there is actually mechanical energy being introduced, causing that force to be applied to the matter. When a microphone does not have that force, it does not have that energy inherently in it just because it is in a location.
It does.
No, it doesn't.
It does.
Where is it stored? Where's this energy stored?
In the hand.
How can you measure that force?
It's in the hand that's holding it by virtue of the fact that the microphone is in a state of disequilibrium.
Oh yes, in state of equilibrium, right? So, and then it has this inherent force. So how do you measure that force that causes it to fall like that? Where is it stored?
It's relative to how much of a disequilibrium it's in. The more of a disequilibrium, the bigger the force will be. The less of a disequilibrium, the slower it'll be, or the less of it.
Now you're just saying that the force just comes out of nothing.
I'm not saying it's a force. It'll just move by virtue of the fact that it's in a state of disequilibrium. Everybody can understand that.
Yeah, but it wouldn't do that in other situations.
But we see it in fluid dynamics all the time.
Your fluid dynamics, what?
Yeah. So when you get
that's the density and buoyancy effect in a stationary scenario. But that's the whole point. You keep on bringing this back. Okay, that's just density and buoyancy.
Why is it any different when it's not in a fluid? Why is gas not the same? And solids in a gas, microphones in the atmosphere?
Because it's heavier.
Right. But it's the same thing in fluids. It's just they're all closer to each other and you can see it. So it makes more sense in a fluid. But if you get a solid and you put it in a gas, that's just going from one end of the extreme to the other end of the extreme because you're not all close to each other like you are with liquids. So if you have a gas and you have a solid in that gas, chances are it'll displace.
Yeah, but that's all pressure physics. That's all density, buoyancy, pressure physics.
It's got nothing to do with pressure.
Yeah, it does. That's what makes it. That's what it does.
It's got nothing to do with pressure. It's just to do with density.
And things press back, and then they motion. Because one pressure of one part is greater than the other. That's how the density and buoyancy rearranges itself. It only does that when a force is applied.
Winovich, it has nothing to do with pressure. It's just to do with its density of the environment it's in.
It is expressed in force. That is, now I'm mixing it up. It is basically just like how pressure rearranges itself.
No, how density.
Yeah, water presses against itself, and that's how it forms an equilibrium. That's how it becomes a puddle.
You know what? You know when an aerosol, when you put deodorant on, you have to shake the aerosol. You understand why you have to shake it, right?
What? Sorry, can make
an aerosol deodorant. When you put deodorant on after a bath or a shower, right? You have to shake the tin before you put it on, right? You know why that settlement happens?
Yeah.
Because the heavier stuff inside the tin goes to the bottom, and the lighter stuff gets displaced and goes to the top. Right, it's the same in our atmosphere, and the microphone would be the denser stuff. So all it does is displaces the air that's below it because it's more dense than it. That's all it is.
So put that deodorant bus or whatever you want to call it, that thing, put it in your car, okay, and then like drive really, really fast with it. I'll tell you, it's gonna displace whatever is inside there. It's gonna displace just like everything else because another force is being applied that will change the axis of the density buoyancy alignment.
So if you put a settled tin of aerosol in a car and accelerated to 100 miles an hour, what were you saying would happen?
It will go to one side because the density buoyancy alignment axis changes as the new force is being applied. Just like a helium balloon will thrust forward.
Slow down.
Just like you're going to be pressed in the seat of your car.
So relative to the tin that's got settled deodorant in it, are you saying that it would mix itself back up again?
Well, if you stop somebody, it's going to shake up because a sudden axial alignment change, density buoyancy alignment change is going to shake things up. Yeah, sure.
I agree, but why is it difficult for you to get? My point, which is that when you have the microphone and you drop it, all it does is displaces the air that's below it because the microphone's more dense than it. And that's the end of the discussion.
I'm not denying that.
But why does there need to be a force there?
Because it is. Because it has an influence. Because when other forces are applied, the alignment of the density buoyancy direction changes. It's a direct effect due to force being applied. So it's going in a direction for a good reason.
But there doesn't need to be a force for it to do it. Its own density.
It does.
Anyway. No,
it does.
There doesn't. But there doesn't.
Yes, it does. It's
Okay.
it's directly like how things split apart in density buoyancy can be attributed directly to how much force is being applied. If you're going to put some matter in a centrifuge and centrifuge it around basically until it becomes what they say gravity levels, and things will start to separate themselves just normally, as if in a stationary situation, but towards the side of the centrifuge. If you then spin that centrifuge 100 times faster, well, let me tell you, the density buoyancy ratio is going to be a lot faster. Things are going to separate themselves a lot quicker and more vividly and more precisely. The layers will become more separated because there's more force being applied. Thus, the density buoyancy effect is directly related to forces being applied. It's directly related in every sense. Just it. And I can't change the variables of the downward acceleration force in a stationary situation on the Earth. I can just apply other forces to show how the density buoyancy aligns itself to forces perfectly. It's a direct consequence of force. And I can negate the motion with the falling plane to show you, look, when the forces are negated by a motion with it or counter motion, then the equilibrium sets in within the forces being applied to all matter, causing the density and buoyancy effect to no longer apply.
Do you agree?
It's a direct result of forces being applied.
Do you agree, though, that there isn't any need for any force? It'll do it.
No, I don't. You haven't listened to a word I said.
No, I have, and I waited
you
patiently
haven't.
to get a word in, and I couldn't. You continue speaking twice, but I'm asking you a question that is fair. Do you agree or not that a force is not required for displacement?
You can never tell because you can't turn it off to prove that it has to be.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, that's the point that I've been trying
So
to make.
therefore, if you can never tell by your own admission, then why does there need to be one there?
Because it can be deduced that it is there. Because if you negate the effect by motioning with the presumed downward acceleration force, then density and buoyancy effect no longer apply. It becomes neutralized.
But
that's why it's a deduction. Okay, it's a deduction, a very logical, sensible deduction.
But it can also be deduced that no force is required.
No, it can't. That's not a deduction. That's just ignorance. That's just ignoring.
Arwen, hold on, Arwen. Just let him get a few more than 5 seconds in before you jump all over him.
If my mass is greater than your mass, and we're both in a situation where we're able to equilibralize, then you will equilibralize before me because your mass is less. But if my mass is more, it will take me longer because there's a differential between the two of us. I don't see why a force is necessary when we know that things will displace by virtue of their own mass anyway.
But that's only if you negate the density and buoyancy effects as forces are being applied. You're just taking it away. You're just negating it. You're just saying, no, that doesn't matter. That's basically your argument. No, it doesn't matter.
No, my argument is
not define it.
My argument is that it isn't necessary and nor can be proved if it exists.
Exactly. That's exactly what I just said. You're just going to ignore it and say it doesn't matter. All these things that we can actually test.
I'm not ignoring it.
We can deduce it, but we don't have to because I'm just going to ignore it.
I'm not ignoring it. I'm making the point that it isn't necessary and we don't observe it or can prove it.
Arwen, you accused him of talking through you. He's getting halfway through a sentence, and you're doing it to him now.
I'm just saying, Arwen, that it isn't necessary. We don't see one, and it can't be proven to exist. Yet you call one there, and I say, well, prove it. and you get all defensive about it and say that it's a logical deduction.
Yeah.
Well, okay, if it's a logical deduction to you, let's call it Darwin's downward acceleration force.
You don't have to get all snide about this shit, you know?
Well, you're just demanding that there's a force there, and it's the whole principle of our argument that there is no force there.
Yeah, but you have no other sensible explanation except just trickery and saying, "Oh, it's
We do have
potential energy," that kind of nonsense.
No, Arwin, that's not true. We do have an alternative that doesn't require a force called displacement. How many times?
Yeah, all potential energy displacements all very nice. It's all just ignoring all the effects, like forces being applied to matter, causing the realignment of density buoyancy, and just saying, no, that doesn't matter. It's just density and buoyancy. It just happens to work this way for no reason at all. It just is as it is. That's what you're trying to defend here.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, that's what you're trying to defend.
It's not ignoring the effects of density and buoyancy. It's observing
it is.
and
Oh, God,
it's
I'm
observing.
sick of this.
It's observing and accounting for. There doesn't need to be a force, and if you're going to claim that there is a force, then you've got to prove that there is actually a force there.
No, I don't have to prove anything, and I can't.
It's the baller's point, Arwin.
Not the baller's point.
Of course it is. It's their
hold
point.
on, let's
Their
just
point is
hold
that
on.
gravity
There's a hold on. There's a cross purpose. What Anthony's saying, Arwin, is that the way we pull apart the Globers' arguments is to get them to actually prove their assertions, and your get out is to say, I can't prove it, but I will assert it based on logical deduction. Well, that is exactly how we undermine and take apart their arguments on a daily basis. So we can't. It's kind of live by the sword, die by the sword in that regard. You're going to get your head chopped off by Anthony.
All do it.
You
all constantly deduce things. We do it all the time. If you couldn't say anything because you couldn't prove it, I'd shut you up 90% of the time. You just ban me for constantly disrupting you. I'd take every word away from you that you can't mention because you have no freaking proof for it. You're just basing it on accepting deductions.
I challenge you, Arwin, to do exactly that for the next week.
No, I'm not going to do that.
I said it's not good.
Freaking things to do with my life and constantly trying to derail everything you're going to say. I'm not a person like that.
Arwin, I can back stuff up that I say. If I can't back it up, I say I don't know. And that is the position that you should take with the gravity one. You should say, I think there's a force there, but I can't prove it. You should say that you think there's a force there, but you can't prove it. But you don't. You demand that there is a force there, and we accept it. And I don't accept it because you can't prove it.
I deduce that it's there.
I don't care whether you deduce it. It's whether you can prove it.
It's the gradient of density buoyancy. It is directly affected by forces being applied. It can be changed in its ratio with the strength of the forces being applied.
Arwin, what's the force that's being applied?
It is basically routed in motion and motion effects. That is the only thing that seems to respond the same way.
As displacement?
Well, if you call motion displacement, yeah, a displacement will cause a force to be applied to that matter, causing all kinds of things like weight, whatever you want, however you want to call it, motion.
If displacement's the cause, Arwin.
But it specifically has to do with acceleration motion because a constant motion doesn't have the same effect.
Arwin, why can't you call it displacement rather than a downward acceleration force?
Because I don't want to freaking adapt my lingo every few weeks because you don't like me using it.
It's not that I don't like you using it.
Yeah, it is. You constantly try to force me to use other freaking words and I'm not doing it.
Arwin, you can't prove it. That's the
I don't give a fuck. I'm not going to freaking change my lingo constantly because you want me to.
No swearing.
No swearing.
I'm just saying that it would be better to use a word. It would be better to use a word that everybody understands, and we all know what displacement means.
I'm sick of this. No.
I have a question for Arwen.
Sure.
Are you still there? Do forces create equilibrium or disequilibrium?
What? Do forces create the equilibrium or disequilibrium? What are you saying?
Like if I apply a force to something, is it in a state of equilibrium, or is it now in a state of disequilibrium?
It is, if you apply a force from a situation where before there is no force applied, then yes, it will suddenly cause a realignment of the density buoyancy directions, and that will cause a temporary disequilibrium until the material within the body to which the new force is being applied finds a new equilibrium, which it will immediately start to do.
So in my estimation, then, for something to be in an equilibrium state, based on what you just said, it cannot have a force applied to it.
Sorry, what? It's on now the new equilibrium, the disequilibrium only happens when a new force is being applied to a body of matter where before there was none. Because if there is a constant force that is always the same, then yeah, things will have found their equilibrium within it. That is the standard scenario of Earth.
Who kicked Anthony?
Any more questions?
Who kicked Anthony?
Yeah, I did.
Why?
Because I'm freaking sick of it.
So, because you're sick of it, you can kick who you want.
I was continually pressing the same shit over and over again. And he's actually trying to force me to change my lingo to whatever freaking word he wants at the time. I'm sick of that shit.
That's why it's called a debate, though, isn't it?
No, that's not a debate. That's forcing me to change my language. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna be politically correct to the Anthony Riley method, okay?
Displacement.
Yeah, well, if you don't like it, then you leave.
I'm gonna kick him.
That noise needs turning off, whoever it is.
It's me. Sorry, cars.
That's loud. Arwin, my question was reasonable. Why can't you call it displacement when no force is required?
Go screw yourself. I'm not gonna.
So you're just being defiant. You're just being like a baller. That's what they do.
I'm not gonna adapt my lingo to your freaking wishes of the week, you asshole.
I'm not asking you to adapt. I'm just saying what's wrong
with language. You're literally asking me that.
I'm not. I'm asking you what's wrong with calling it displacement.
You are literally asking me to adapt my lingo.
All right.
And I'm not gonna.
Let me ask it this way, Nathan. I think it's reasonable that displacement better describes this position. He won't answer the question for me. Perhaps one of the other panel members could ask him, what's wrong with calling it displacement?
No, you're on your own. You ask him.
Well, he won't answer me.
Well, I mean, from Arwen's point of view, he just says he just sees it as him bending to your will. I don't see it as an unreasonable question, so I will ask it. Why can't you just call it displacement, Arwen?
And that's not ganging up on you.
Hold on, Anthony.
General displacement can be caused by several things, okay? It is not a force necessarily that causes displacement. Can just be the natural workings of density and buoyancy. The pressure can cause displacement. A force being applied can be displacement. It's very specific what causes this. What causes the density buoyancy ratio to align the way it does. It's not displacement. The displacement is an effect that can be anything.
But you're confusing cause and effect. You're saying the effect can be anything, but then you're saying there must be a cause. So if you're saying there must be a cause and you don't know what that cause is,
I do know what it is. I just don't know what causes the cause.
I'm just trying to establish, what they call a constant. You call a downward acceleration force, and what Anthony is saying is there's no need to label it anything. It's just displacement. So I don't understand why you wouldn't concede that, to be honest, Darwin.
Because I'm not going to change my lingo. Downward acceleration force
So it's defiance.
describes perfectly the effect. It describes it perfectly because it is an acceleration like force. It is
Hang on, Alwyn.
Exactly like acceleration.
Hold on, Anthony. Hold on.
Functions the same way. It is not acceleration, but it's very much the same effect.
You've done it again.
Alwyn.
You've just done it again. So you're talking about something simultaneously being both cause and effect, something that, again, the Globers are guilty of when they describe exactly this. And we're into literally a parallel argument with you now. So, you know, without having any actual proof of it, it does seem a bit unreasonable to assert it. Now, this came up about a week ago when you and Anthony debated it, and now we're at the point where you're at a stalemate, but what Anthony's saying is, well, if you're going to insist upon it, then it should be branded with you.
No, I'm not gonna wear the freaking Jew star, okay?
It's not that. It's what he's. No. It's not. No. You're drawing a comparison to. That's not fair. You're drawing a comparison to the Jews, which is a group of people, and this is you as an individual. Now, while your arguments parallel the globe's arguments for gravity specifically, your downward acceleration force is your own. So that is where Anthony is coming from so far. Am I right, Anthony? Hope I've summarised it reasonably well.
Yeah, you are, but you just
that I didn't actually
up on what you last
invent
said.
the word.
Alwyn, you said that downward acceleration force describes it perfectly. But can you tell me what the difference between downward acceleration and downward acceleration force is? Because they're both the same, but one doesn't need to have the word force on it, and it doesn't require the burden of proof to prove said force.
To that. It's getting too confusing. I gotta call it something. And this, I didn't even invent this. Okay, this is not the word that I made up for it. Okay, you guys handed this to me because I couldn't call it gravity. I just wanted to call it gravity and say, like, look, it's the wrong type. It's such a problem with it. So yeah, no. You know what? Why don't you just call it the downward acceleration force? You know. That's like a more classical approach. So, okay, fine, I call it that. And then I've been calling it for a month. And now, how dare you call that? Yeah, you did that. Yeah, you have to adapt again. You have to call it something else because you can't prove it's a force.
Alwyn.
So, yeah.
Alwyn, let me ask you this and try and answer this question. What's the difference between, from an evidence point of view, what's the difference between a downward acceleration and a downward acceleration force? Which one's easier to prove?
Downward acceleration describes a motion. It's not specific enough.
Right. Well, that's what we see. We see a downward acceleration. All right. So what's the alternative? A downward acceleration force that you can't prove?
Yeah. That's fine.
Right. So which is the easy one
that I can't prove? Which is I'm not gonna like type an entire word. I'm not gonna use another word. I'm just gonna call it downward acceleration force because people understand that. And they might ask like, oh, what? How can you prove that? And I'll tell them, yeah, I can't. I can only deduce it. And you know what? Most people will actually settle for it. They won't get all anal over it and try to force me to use other type of words.
Well, we're not trying to force you, but we're asking. We're hoping that we emphasize or illustrate.
Asking, hoping that I'll break and just do it anyway. That's what you're doing.
No, there's a difference between a downward acceleration and a downward acceleration force, and the difference is evidence, because you don't need a lot of evidence to prove a downward acceleration, but you do need a whole different type of evidence for a downward acceleration force.
You know that downward acceleration force, as I call it, it's not actually about acceleration.
It's about
It has
force.
nothing really to do with it. You know why it's called that?
Well, if it didn't, you would call it a downward acceleration.
No, yeah, but it's not about acceleration. There's actually no acceleration involved at all. Because that's the part that can
Yeah, Arwen, it's
absolutely
about
be
force
proven
bit.
not to be true, because the Earth is not accelerating. But what you can do is say, look, there's this effect. It's being applied to all things in a stationary setting. And the only thing we can compare it to is the force of acceleration, because that seems to rearrange the density buoyancy alignment perfectly and has a direct connection to it entirely. So we'll call it the acceleration force, because that is what it seems to be functioning like. And that is why it's called the downward acceleration force. And I even on my own volition started to change the way I say it, because I now tend to say, okay, it's the downward acceleration like force, because it really has nothing to do with acceleration. It is only
I've never heard you say
acceleration force.
Arwen, let me ask you. Arwen, if we're talking laterally, not up and down, we're talking left to right or front to back. If we accelerate ourselves to 60 miles an hour using a force, we can identify the force to be a car or a rocket or a cannon. So we would accelerate using that force, right? But if you're going to go up and down, that force would still need to be identified to be able to explain the movement. But we can explain the movement with displacement, and it doesn't require a force. It just requires a disequilibrium. So again, if you're going to use the word force, you add evidence. You add an evidential burden to yourself that you admit you can't prove. And what I'm saying is, it's easier to describe it as either a displacement or a downward acceleration, but without the word force.
I'm not gonna because displacement also happens when other forces are being applied. Then the density buoyancy will show other types of displacement, which will realign themselves to within the matter in accordance with the density buoyancy laws in its axis towards the new forces being applied. So displacement doesn't explain it. It's a non-explanation. It just leaves out everything. It ignores all these things that happen when you apply forces to matter. That's what you're doing.
So what?
I'm not gonna go there.
What bit does it not explain?
It doesn't explain how, when other forces through motion, like things, apply to matter, how then suddenly the axis shifts of the density buoyancy within that body of mass.
That's exactly what displacement is, though. It describes exactly that.
Yeah, so why does it do that then when a force is being applied, and when there's no force measurably being applied, scientifically provingly being applied, why does it align itself the way it does? Do you have an explanation for that?
Yeah, disequilibrium. We saw it with the egg. Do you remember when we had the salt water?
No, that has nothing. That is density buoyancy itself. It doesn't explain the alignment in the stationary situation of the world. It doesn't explain why the density buoyancy aligns the way it does within this world.
It does.
No, it doesn't.
Well, when the egg was sat in the middle of the water, that was in a state of equilibrium.
I know.
Now, if we force it into a state of disequilibrium by making the density,
this world, the density buoyancy
aligns
itself the way it does.
Just listen, Arwen. When the egg was sat in the water and it was sat right in the middle of the water, it was in a state of equilibrium, right, in that relative position. If we make it into a state of disequilibrium by putting salt in, we change the density of the water around the egg. The egg then magically moves. But we know that the cause was adding salt, and we know that salt is more dense, and that's the logical deduction. But it doesn't require a force to happen. It just requires a cause. And we know what the cause was. It was salt. So I don't see how displacement doesn't explain everything that we see.
Not thinking about what I'm saying has nothing to do with it. That's density.
Well, you're saying that it's not. It doesn't explain.
It has nothing to do with the alignment of the density buoyancy ratio. It doesn't have to do with the alignment, the direction in which the density buoyancy things happen. It's just the workings of density buoyancy. It doesn't explain the direction. How many freaking times do I have to tell you this?
It does. The relative density explains the direction. If the egg is more dense or less dense, that is the direction.
Doesn't explain the direction of why up and down, why these directions
Yeah, it does.
No, it doesn't. It just
It does.
shows you, look, this is how density and buoyancy functions. Doesn't explain why it doesn't do that sideways.
Arwin,
Why
if
doesn't it
egg,
do that? Why does it go up
if-
and down in a stationary
if
situation?
egg is
Do you have
greater
an
than
Hold on,
explanation for
water,
that?
hold on, Anthony. Alwyn, can you repeat your question again, please?
What question? Sorry, I'm getting really stressed out here.
Maybe not then.
if egg is greater than environment, egg goes down. If egg is less than environment, egg goes up. How does that not explain the position that we see?
Why doesn't it go sideways?
It can go sideways if it can move.
Really? I'll demonstrate it then. Why does it
Well,
always go up and down
look at the
when you
atmosphere.
change the density of the water?
Look at the atmosphere. The atmosphere is the same kind of thing, and we see that
Why
there's layers of the
does
atmosphere.
it do that?
Why does it do that?
Yeah.
Because it's able to move laterally if there's an element of a
Hold
force
on,
being
hold on.
applied to it.
Hold on. You're begging the question. You're just saying it's able to move laterally, which is Arwen's argument. So he's saying why? Why is it going downward?
Why is it going downward? Because its density is greater than the environment it's in.
Why? Why does it do that? And why
Density.
doesn't it do that if you apply other forces to a body of mass? Why does it go in other directions?
Well, it can go in other directions.
Sorry
it
to
can go
interrupt.
up or down.
Sorry, Adam, if you can, any chance you can join? Can't, no worries. I'm keeping the show open because this is a good discussion, but it seems like you've got something to add on it. Sorry, carry on, gentlemen.
Well, density and buoyancy is essentially up and down. So if you're asking for lateral movement left and right, you would need somewhat other than density or buoyancy, because density and buoyancy is up and down. So you would need some element of, like, you would need to displace the air at the side of it. I'm trying to think how you would displace the air at the side of it. You would need some kind of convection current to be able to move it around sideways.
Would it be you need another force applying to it?
So
That will
if it
change
was a
the
force,
direction of the alignment.
so if you could, let's say that there was a force that you were going to apply to it to make it move, you'd be able to identify that force, right?
Yeah.
Right. But we know that the density and the buoyancy of the layers above and below it, we know that that's the cause of it moving up and down. So we don't need a force to make it move up or down. We know what the cause is. It's density and buoyancy. But if you want to move it left and right,
you don't know why.
if you want to move it left and right, let's go with that. You have to apply a force. Well, whatever force you apply to it, you can identify that force, right? So why would you claim that there would need to be a force absent of density and buoyancy when you know that density and buoyancy is the cause?
Because when you apply a force to a body of mass, then density and buoyancy don't go up and down. They realign themselves in accordance to the new forces being applied.
They do go up and down. They equilibralize.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't. I explained this to you. You seem to ignore it constantly. If you put a thing
Because
in
I
a
don't agree with you.
centrifuge, if you put your eggs and the water and the salt and everything in a centrifuge at a constant speed, it's not going to go up or down. It's going to go inward or outward.
I see George Netanyahu
The
in chat.
density buoyancy is being realigned in accordance to the new forces being applied.
I see George Netanyahu in the chat, and I see that his last video was an attack video on Twit for being a liar. Yeah, I don't see a video from George apologizing for his lies himself. Are you projecting your own lies onto Twit, George? Make an apology. You lied. We all know you lied. Apologize. Right, Arwin, just ask him how you would calculate different material.
I was just about to read that. Arwin, just ask him how you would calculate different material interactions in air from CBH team member. Shout out to you, CBH team member.
Well, let's flip that the other way around. How are you going to make an object move up or down in the atmosphere without density or buoyancy? Apply a force, right? But we don't have a force to apply. So let's say we're going to move something up or down without changing the density or the buoyancy of the thing that you're going to make it move up or down. So let's say that you've got the egg in the water and you want to make that egg go down. You need to apply a force, which would be your finger. You push it down with your finger, and then you can say, I've just used a force, which was my finger, to push the egg down. But if you didn't have the egg, if you didn't have the finger, and you wanted the egg to move down and it was sat in a state of equilibrium, how are you going to get that egg to move if you don't change the density or the buoyancy? You must apply a force. So what is the force? You haven't got one.
Entire medium.
Right, but
doing
by then
it
you're
in a
changing the
room
effect.
that is inside a plane, and then you dive to counter the downward acceleration like force, and suddenly it won't do the same thing.
That's not the same thing, though, is it? All you're doing there is making free fall. You've got to counter
the force with a counter force. That's what you do with forces. You have a force and you have the counter force.
Arwin, if you put the egg in a swimming pool and it sits in the middle of the deep part, right? And you want that egg to go down, and you're not going to change the density or the buoyancy, you need a force to do it. You need to swim down to it, and drag it down yourself. Agreed?
Yeah, it's a stationary situation, yeah. But now apply that same thing in a car, and in the back of the car, you got a tub or like a big bowl filled with water, and the egg is in that water, and maybe to the bottom or to the top of it. Guess what? If that car is going to accelerate, suddenly the egg is going to shift. It's going to shift because the alignment of the density buoyancy has shifted because a new force is being applied.
Yeah, but what was the cause, though, right? You accelerated or braked hard.
Yeah, the entire body has shifted. It is moving. A new force is being introduced.
To be fair, Arwin, I'm not seeing how that's a comparable situation because you've got two separate reference frames. I think my explanation in the swimming pool was better.
I can't move the entire Earth. I can't turn it off. But you can compare it. That's why it's a deduction.
Right. But the egg in the swimming pool, if you wanted it to go to the bottom, you have to apply a force. If you didn't change the density of the water around it or change the density of the egg itself, you would have to make it move yourself. You'd have to make the force, right? And we agree.
Yeah, that's how density and buoyancy work in stationary situations when the alignments don't change by themselves because no other forces are being applied. Yeah.
Well, listen, Arwin, do you not see the difference, though? Like, if we make the egg go down ourselves, we would then be the force. But if we don't make the egg go down and we change the salinity of the water and the egg does it all by itself, in the absence of being able to identify a force, and we know we've just changed the density, why is it not the case that it's simply displacement?
That is displacement. It's very simple.
And
it
that's
is
all
a
what
part
happens when you get the
density
microphone
and buoyancy. Doesn't explain the alignment, though.
But
doesn't explain the alignment of up and down in the stationary situation of Earth.
Arwin, there's no alignment issue. All we see is the microphone being dropped. And we know that the microphone's heavier than the air it sits in. It doesn't need to go any more further than that.
Same thing in the centrifuge, and it doesn't go up or down. It goes to the side because another force.
But you're applying a force.
Applied.
You're applying a centrifugal force, right?
Yeah.
Right. So where's the application of a force when the microphone drops?
Sorry? Are you talking about the centrifuge within that setting or in the stationary setting?
If you're applying a centrifuge, you can see that there's a centrifuge being applied. So you know that there's a force there because you can see it, you can identify it, you can point it out, you could even calculate it. But if the microphone just drops, like I'm on about Neil deGrasse Tyson dropping his microphone, where's the force? Why is it not just relative density and that's it? Relative displacement.
It is. But it doesn't explain the alignment of the density buoyancy.
It does. It explains.
No, it doesn't. It just shows you how density buoyancy works. It doesn't explain the alignment. It doesn't explain the directions.
It does. Microphone's density is 100. It does, Arwin. The microphone's density value is 100. It does. It
No,
explains it
it
absolutely, and
doesn't.
it doesn't
It's
need to.
just
It
up and
does,
down.
Arwin. The
That's
microphone's
not an
got a value of
explanation. It's
100.
just
The
up and
air it
down is
sits in
not
is
an
a value of
explanation.
1. No, Arwin, you're not listening. It explains it
I am
completely.
listening. You're not listening.
Arwin, it explains it completely. The microphone has a value of 100. The air it sits in has a value of 1. It's going to go down. We call it down, but all it's doing is displacing.
Yeah. Nathan just rounded out because this is going nowhere. We could.
No, I didn't.
I was just waiting for you to respond.
This is very important. It's semantics. That's the issue with the globe, and a
It's
lot
not
of
semantics.
presuppositions and thinking and theories and what if, and then they put all these little letters, and we gotta get to the little details. And this is good.
Yeah, but I'm not getting an answer. Why the alignment? Why the density buoyancy alignment in the stationary situation? Why?
If I can just correct that, it's not semantical. It's evidential. There is no need for or evidence of any downward acceleration force. All we see is a downward acceleration, and
why
it
do
is
you keep
explained by
hammering on it?
displacement. Say again.
You can't vary the force on this world without applying motion to a specific body within it. Yeah, you can see that, you can measure it, you can calculate it. Yeah, you can't do that with the entire world. So yeah, I can't scientifically prove it. Yeah, I know. But still, you have no explanation for the alignment.
Arwin, why would you cite something that you know that you can't prove? You might as well say unicorns.
That's a big pile of shitty straw man, dude.
No, it's not. It's a direct comparison. If you admit and accept that you can't prove it,
you have no explanation for the alignment, and you're not addressing it. You haven't addressed it a single time. You just say density buoyancy up and down, density buoyancy. Why? Why the alignment? Why up and down?
Because of the disequilibrium.
You don't answer it.
Because of the disequilibrium.
Density buoyancy.
The reason.
Why up and down?
Because of the disequilibrium. I've said it many times.
Doesn't explain up or down.
Yes, it does.
No, because it doesn't. It just describes an effect as part of density buoyancy. It doesn't explain the alignment.
Let's go, Arwin. Let's go back to the egg in the water in the swimming pool. If the egg sits in the middle of the swimming pool and you, listen, Arwin. If the egg sat in the middle of the swimming pool and you want that egg to go down, you've got to apply a force to it. Or
stop
you can
telling the same freaking story.
But you're saying that I'm not explaining why down.
Giving an answer.
But you're
why
not understanding
up and down?
Or you're just denying it. I am explaining.
We need to know the how, not the why.
Stop asking me the same damn things over.
We don't want to know why. We don't want to know why. We don't want to know how. Proof, evidence.
Arwin, you keep saying that I'm not explaining why down, and I am, but you're not understanding it, or you're just being defiant. It's one or the other, or maybe both.
Up and down, the alignment of the density buoyancy. Why up and down? Why the alignment? Why is it like that in a stationary scenario?
How many times? Let's go back to the egg in the swimming pool.
It's not an explanation. It just describes how density and buoyancy works. But it doesn't work like that when other forces are being applied.
For the egg to go down.
It's not universal. It's just
yes, it is. It will always do it. It will always do it, Arwin. If the egg sits in the middle of the water because it's in a state of equilibrium, to get that egg to go down, you've got to make a force happen on it. You've got to put your hand in it and push it down. But you can see that force. But if you could do it without a force and change the density around it, and it displaces its own self, there's your cause. That's your reason why it's up or down.
Does anyone else in the panel has an opinion on this subject?
I'm just waiting for Arwin to accept that no force is required unless you can prove one. Well, he's already admitted, but I don't understand why he keeps saying that it's a force when he knows he can't admit it. He can't prove it, and he admits that. You may as well just say that you ride a unicorn to work every day.
Yeah, I can't see the point of keep going on about it when it can't be proven. It's just like you said, it could be unicorns. Let's talk about unicorns all the time, shall we?
I'd rather talk about Bill Miller. Do you want to come in, George, and let's see your explanation for why you say it was Bill Miller, and we all know that it wasn't. Even Twitwit knows it wasn't. So come on, get on. Let's defend yourself, and let's see what you've got to say about it. Because you didn't put Bill Miller in all of the threads, did you? You only did it in the one, and you didn't even do it on the same day. You did it 3 days later. So come on, George, let's hear it. Or let's hear an apology for lying. One or the other.
An apology would be nice. Nice video apology.
You need an apology, George. You didn't do it at the same time. You didn't do it in all the threads. And the thread that I saw your comment in was not a thread that Bill Miller was mentioned in, hence the apparent so-called claimed confusion. Well, why would it not be in the thread that I saw it in, started by FE Astronomy? It was only in the thread that I'd personally started. No wonder everybody got confused by it. No wonder Twitwit realizes that there's no such thing as Bill Miller. I don't believe there's any such thing as Bill Miller. Is Bill Miller this downward density force thing that Arwin talks about that can't be proven? Because I don't think that Bill Miller exists. And even if he did, you weren't referring to him in the threads. You only referred to him in one thread, and it caused confusion, George. You're a moron.
Yeah, but he did it just to show that he's got a sense of humour.
The sense of humor is he say, let's do it in non sequitur show. He doesn't want to do it in Nathan's show. How about that, Anthony?
Yeah, I wonder why that might be. Why would we go to non sequitur when there's a link in the chat and everybody wants? I mean, let's raise a bit of awareness. Let's get George in now. He can come on and he can do this right now. Share his screens and he can show us all the evidence, and we can see the difference in the timings when he put the comments on. On the 7th day was the original comment. The 6th day was his comment, and then 3 days had elapsed, and then he started seeing the comments going everywhere else. So come on, George.
He was here last week, and he saw how respectful we were, and we didn't interrupt you guys talking.
Yeah, the only reason why you won't come on, George, is because you'll be ripped a new bum hole, and that's it.
I'm happy to keep it open a bit longer.
We were respectful. We didn't interrupt you guys talking. I mean, there were 10 people in the panel and only 2 talking. Nobody interrupted. That's respect.
Nobody's forcing you to join, George.
Why does he want neutral ground? I mean, it's not that difficult, George. You just come in and say, I'm sorry, I lied. Or, Riley, you got it wrong because here's the dates where I did actually post them and they all match. And we know that they can't do that because we've already looked at it and I've presented the evidence that shows that they don't match. You did it 3 days later to try and create plausible deniability. You were covering your tracks. You were falsifying evidence. You were creating a plausible deniability claim that you got caught out on. So why can't you just come on and say, I'm sorry, I lied? Come on, George, it's not hard. Just come in and say, you caught me out, I lied, I'm sorry. You know, like we had to when we thought we saw Ireland, we had to apologize. Well, not apologize, but we had to admit that we couldn't see it.
How long would you like me to give it?
To be honest, Nathan, you're the boss. You can do it as long as you want, but I think we should do it until George either disappears or people in chat put pressure on him, the way that Mick West got pressure put on him. Mick was in chat. People put pressure on him. He joined. Well, I think we should apply pressure to George, and I think that the one person that should do it would be Jeremy, Gem Panda.
You know
so
my,
can you?
You know my feelings on this, which is to say that George has already been exposed. You know, he is towing the line in terms of the narrative, in terms of what he's done, which is what he stood accused of, and he's admitted it. So the guy's been exposed. He's contacted Brian's senior authorities, whatever you want to phrase it as. You know, he's done that. We know he has. He's admitted it.
I know.
In terms of the speculative damage that's caused, I'm not interested. He has done those things. In terms of the string of lies that he's told afterwards, that should be glaringly obvious to everyone watching or paying attention to what George is typing out. He's obviously a liar. You know, the fact that he's seeking neutral ground rather than coming in and defending his obvious truth, right? No, of course not. He's too cowardly to actually come in and say, no.
That's it.
Brian Miller's real. Of course, look. Here's endless videos from Brian Miller or Bill Miller or whatever the hell his name is, WM. So
Bob Marley.
Well, it'd be William, wouldn't it?
The thing is, though, it's the mark of a man who can apologise for when he's made a mistake. And what I'm pointing out is, like it or not, Nathan, the guy will not apologise. He will not admit he's made a mistake, and he's being defiant in the same way that Arwen's defiant with his position on this downward acceleration force. The only difference is George is on the other side of the fence. So come on, George, be a man. Come in and say, I lied. I'm sorry. I didn't post those things on the same day, but you caught me out. Just admit it. Come on and say, I lied. I'm sorry. Because put it this way, George, if it was the other way around and I was the one that was caught lying, what would happen? You lot would be all over me like a rash, and I would have to do something, wouldn't I? I wouldn't sit in the chat defiantly, brass-faced, being an idiot. Wouldn't be allowed.
I think you've got your wish. He's disappeared, it seems.
I hope he has. And don't come back. Not until you can be a man and admit that you're a liar and that you're sorry. But you won't, because you're
That's not going to happen. All that's going to happen is he's just going to weave another slightly more thin, slightly more pathetic lie and convince himself that he's done a good job. You know, we all know he's lying. He's been exposed. You know, for me, it's just... You know, who is this? Oh, he's there again. Wait
2 hours and I might come in. Don't think so, George.
2 hours? The show's been running for 3 hours. 3 hours plus. 3.5 hours. Look, now and never, George. You know, I'm literally keeping the show open in case you want to join.
And let's just point out as well that Twitwit called you out on it. And I don't really get on with Twit. She doesn't really get on with me, but she at least realises that you did not put them comments to create maximum exposure at the same time as you put the original one on. You put them 3 days later.
Hold on, Gem Panda's just said something that's caught my attention, that I was about to start lying about him. So based on that, I will now verbalise what Gem Panda's been doing. Gem Panda is gathering information on Flat Earthers' children. That's what Gem Panda's currently doing, and positively encouraging other members of his community to pass him information about other people's children. So that's currently what Gem Panda's doing. Make of that what you will.
Is that grooming, Nathan, by any chance?
You can make of it what you will. I am stating a fact. Gem Panda is explicitly asking for information about other people's children and encouraging others to pass him information about other people's children. This is what Gem Panda's doing. I've challenged him to explain why he's gathering information on other people's children in the chat. He hasn't responded. He's responded with scorn. So I'm verbally going to ask Gem now. I want an explanation for why you are gathering information on other people's children. Also, why you're sending minors here. That would be the Globe side. Red Rhetoric, all those people who hang around in those chats. You've got a co-conspirator, which would be this little Blue Marble faggot, whatever you call him. Blue Marble has come here, he's a minor, and you've sent him here. He's just a little pecker. So why are you gathering information on other people's children and simultaneously sending minors here? This is a question to the entire Globe side. As far as I can see, the behaviour in general of the Globe side of this argument is abhorrent. It's not just George, it's all of them. So we've got Gem Panda gathering information on people's children. I'm not joking about this. This is actually what's happening. Yeah, George Hattonuk just basically putting people's careers at risk. These people are the pits. This isn't Flat Earthers, the monsters that we're portrayed in a humorous way in the mainstream media, is very much contrasted in this sector, this small little internet corner that we preside. We have got true monsters amongst us, and they're not Flat Earthers, they are Globe enthusiasts. Anti-Flat Earthers, these monsters that we see in the chat. That's why I have the chat published. People can see exactly what's being said. It won't go away if someone mirrors it. It'll still be on the video. So that's what the point is. And this is the kind of thing that they do. They will destroy your career and then they'll go after your children. That's what Globers do. It is the pit.
And let me just mention George claiming that Twitwit is a bad source and she's a liar. Well, I don't particularly get on with Twitwit. I don't have anything bad to say about her. She sounds a bit like Thelma off Simpsons, but other than that, I don't really have anything bad to say about her. But I agree with Twitwit. You are a liar, George, and you cannot call her a liar when you are one yourself. That makes you a hypocrite. So not only are you a liar, you're a hypocrite.
Being told I'm making big claims, according to IFTH, so I'll state it again. Gem Panda 2012, otherwise known as Jeremy Whartonby, is gathering information about other people's children and encouraging others to pass him information about other people's children. That is a fact. It's not a bold claim. Gem Panda, feel free to challenge it. I've asked you to in the chat. I'm asking why you're doing it. I'm not trying to ask whether or not you are doing this. I'm stating it's fact. You are doing this. I want to know why you're doing it because I find it abhorrent and disgusting and I question your motivation. That's me genuinely concerned as a parent. Hopefully you can detect the slight concern in my voice because it's genuine. I am genuinely disturbed by Gem Panda's actions. And like with George, I think this is actually more severe and people should be looking into what this guy is doing and why he is doing it. I've asked him in the chat. He's demeaned it and poured scorn on it like it's nothing. I don't see another man investigating another man's child or other people's children as anything other than nefarious. So unless there's a decent explanation for why he's doing what he's doing, I want people to gather that information from him and challenge him to give a decent answer for why he's doing what he's doing.
And to be honest, I don't see any reason why that's a problem. If he's got a justification for it, surely the accusation that he's collecting information on children would be bad enough that he would want to immediately defend it and explain it, because that's what people that are not doing anything nefarious would do. Why are you not on here, Jeremy? Why are you not explaining yourself? Nathan's got a fair point.
Yeah, I'm asking questions. Why are you gathering information on people's children, Gem Panda? It seems very suspicious, and I want answers. Hello,
what are you upset about?
P. Mars, how are you doing?
Yeah, Jeremy subbed to a channel called Flat Earth Teens.
So am I. So what?
And he has there's a room in his Discord that's titled Flat Earth Children. It's pretty weird.
Yes, that's where I found this information. That's where I found this.
That is weird.
It's got a Discord channel called Flat Earth Children.
Like
I say, this whole thing stinks. This whole thing stinks, and this is all Globers going after flat earthers specifically. So this is the kind of behaviour we have to deal with here on our little corner of the internet. In our little corner of the internet, this is the behaviour. So, Gem Panda, I don't get it.
What's the behaviour?
Anyone is welcome to join your children's Discord, are they, Gem? You just don't advertise your stuff here. I'm going to time you out. You know, don't punt for business here, right? Don't encourage others to go and join your disgusting Discord. You know, I want explanations. You've been put in timeout. If you want to explain your heinous actions, come on the panel and explain them right now. I'll keep the show open.
What is it you say he's done?
He's got a Discord server called Flat Earth Children, and he's actively gathering information about other people's children and requesting other people pass him information about children. Is that clear? I've said it about 4 times, Brenda.
What's the purpose of doing that?
Sorry, don't ask me another question. Repeat after me. That is clear, Nathan. I understand that Gem Panda. I understand that Gem Panda's gathering information on other people's children. Repeat it back so I know you understand what I've just explained to you.
Gem Panda's gathering information on other people's children. So what?
Not so what?
What do you mean, so what?
Do you mean so what? That's absolutely disgusting. Why would he be doing such a thing?
And why are you defending it by...
Why are you defending this? Yeah. Are you part of this? I'm sorry, let's just see if you're implicated in this. Are you part of this little group?
No, I'm not on any Flat Earth Discord.
Not Flat Earth, this is about children specifically.
I'm not on Gem Panda's.
Well, why are you defending it then? Why are you defending what Gem Panda's doing and asking us... Why are you demeaning the significance of it then?
Because I don't know that what you say is actually true.
It is true. It's a fact. You can look it up. Gem Panda's Gem Panda's just said in the chat that all are welcome to join his little Discord server about children. Can you stop talking through me, please, Brenda? Brenda, can you stop talking through me, or I'll just remove you? I'm very emotional at the moment. If you talk through me again, I'll remove you. Right? Gem Panda has said in the chat, all are welcome to join it. He's not denying this. He's saying, come and join it.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah. So why would you try and demean it and say, so what? Do you not see this as important?
I don't know the facts. I only hear your side.
I'll tell you the facts again. That's why I asked you to repeat them. That's why I asked you. I said, repeat after me that you understand the significance and the situation. Gem Panda is actively gathering information about people's children and encouraging others to pass him information about other people's children. I've asked him why he's doing this. And then he's just proceeded to not only confirm it, but encourage others to join his group.
You're not honest, Nathan. You're a liar.
Excuse me, these are facts, not challenged. Okay? They haven't been challenged, they've been confirmed by the very person I'm saying is doing this. So I'm not lying, this is a statement of fact. Yeah? I'm asking why. Why is he doing this? And all you're doing, it seems, is coming here and defending it like it's no big deal. I am concerned about it. And as a parent, excuse me, as a parent, I'm entitled to be concerned about such things. Okay? Are you a parent?
Yeah.
Are you a parent?
Yes.
You are?
Yes.
How old are your children?
Yes. None of your business.
Sorry, you said you're a parent. I've got a child. She's 24 months old. How old are your children?
None of your business.
Well, you claim you're a parent, and I want justified proof that you are a parent if you're going to claim that you have a justification or having any concern when you seem to be demeaning this like it's not important. And as a parent, I want you to prove that's the case. I can prove I'm a parent.
No,
I've got a child.
I don't have to prove anything.
Well, then you don't have an opinion on parenthood then.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't. Unless you're a parent. And unless you can prove you are, I don't care about your opinions that may or may not be the case. You may assert that you're a parent. I don't believe you. Okay? I don't believe you're a parent. And unless you're prepared to prove it, I don't care about your opinion on this subject. As a parent, I am deeply concerned by people starting up Discord forums that gather information about children and encourage others to pass them information about children. That to me is disturbing. Okay?
Well, it would be disturbing to me too if that's what's happening, but
that is what's happening. That's precisely what's happening. Gem Panda has not only confirmed that's the case, he's encouraged other people to go there and join.
Nathan, could I just point out that when you asked Brenda how old were her children, her immediate reaction was, "It's none of your business." Well, why is it anybody else's business? Yeah. So it's the same
I don't
rules.
think it is.
So let me get this straight. It's none of my business how old your children are, but it's perfectly acceptable for Gem Panda to gather information on, say, my children.
No, I don't think that's acceptable.
Excuse me. That's the statement of fact. That's what he's doing. He's asking people to pass on information about children and their activities, right? That's what he's doing. But you think it's perfectly acceptable for me to say it's none of my business what your children do? Oh, right. Double standard globe heads. This is absolutely abhorrent. The double standards are outrageous.
Well, I don't know that such a thing exists because you're a liar.
Well, then go away and have a look. He's encouraged people like yourself who don't think it's that important to protect our children to go and join. So go and do your bloody homework and research this abhorrent, disgusting behaviour of people like yourself. Okay? Don't tell me that just because you're ignorant of what's going on, that it might not be anything untoward because you're ignorant.
Nathan, let me make it clear then.
No, just get out. I don't want you demeaning what's going on here. I want Gem Panda to come and explain his actions. So get out of my hangout. Don't demean what's going on. My concern is justified, and I want Gem Panda to come on and explain it.
Nathan, let me just read IFTH's comment to you. He says, "You clearly have no idea what you're talking about. A Discord server is not how paedophiles operate." Well, I'd like to know how paedophiles operate, because how would you know that that's how they do or don't operate?
Precisely. I've no idea. I am IFTH. I have no idea how people who gather information about children go about doing it, but I've seen it going on, and it concerns me. I don't think that's in any way unjustified. That Gem Panda 2012, otherwise known as Jeremy Wartnaby, is literally gathering information about children and encouraging others to do so. That, to me, is disturbing, and I'd like an explanation for why. If there's nothing untoward, why isn't he justifying it right now and saying this is perfectly acceptable? There's nothing untoward. I'm just gathering information about children because I don't see it as a justified... No, there's no reason to gather information about other people's children. So, I'm tempted to call the police Stacey London. I've already said that to Gem Panda. Right? Now, people might say that I'm emotionally charged on account of the fact that he has literally got pictures of me on my hangout with me sat with my kids in this children's server. So I've got a right to be justified, and I may very well call the police about it. So, yeah. But maybe I'm overreacting. But based on his absence, I don't think I am. I think he'd be here justifying his actions if they were justified. If he's not,
Yeah,
I
I
don't
agree.
think I've got a choice other than to phone the police about the guy. Why is he gathering information about children is my question. Am I wrong? Is that unreasonable to ask?
No, I think it's very reasonable. Children are a sensitive issue. I don't have any children myself, but I understand that people that do have children get very, very defensive, guarded, and triggered very, very easily. And I think your reaction's normal to everybody else. Now, I think that if Jeremy was acting with impunity, not impunity, with purity, he would indeed be on here and explaining his position, because it is one of those trigger words. Paul Voigt, Nathan Oakley, you are disgraceful. You are making unfounded accusations. I have not heard a single accusation.
Hello?
Yo.
I got a phone call.
Nathan Oakley, you are a disgraceful person. You are making unfounded accusations, and I would not be surprised if legal action is taken against you. I haven't heard an accusation, and nor have I heard an unfounded accusation. So I don't know what you're talking about, Paul. Can you clarify?
I'm expressing my concern at the site that is set up with literally children in the title and with Jem Panda asking people to give him information about people's kids. That's what's going on here. And I am genuinely concerned about that. I don't understand why all these people in the chat are demeaning this. Why aren't they concerned?
They're demeaning it in the same way that they didn't call out George for telling pork pies. It seems to be okay to protect ballers at no matter what the cost. Find an angle on it, defend it, no matter what. That seems to be what it is. I'm assuming that Nathan's on a call. So in the absence of Nathan chatting at the minute, I'll fill in a little bit of gap. George, apology. Jeremy, come on. Explain your reasoning for why you want information about children. I don't have children myself, but I understand the position. It's natural for him to be a little bit triggered, a little bit guarded. Slandered a guy, doxed him, and then muted him from the live chat so we cannot even counter the insinuation. Who are you talking about, Zal? Why don't you come on and defend him for him? That seems to be what's happening at the minute. Zal, why don't you come on? Let's see what the explanation is for why you think that it's unacceptable for Nathan to challenge why children's information is being collected. I think it's a fair request. Why is it?
I seen a little earlier in the chat, George was asking for money, like $1,300 US for joining the show. I think that's just laughable. I will not spend a penny on that guy.
So Paul Voigt says what Nathan Oakley is doing is slander. No, he's asking for a justification for why somebody is asking information about children. That's not slander. That's requesting information. He's not misrepresenting the facts. I'm sure he could present it on screen, and has no idea what he's talking about. Inform yourself properly, Oakley, before you end up in court for slander. Well, I don't think that there's any slander being said. I think the issue is why. So, Paul, if you can defend this position, why don't you come on? We'll let go for this episode that you don't have any evidence for a molten iron core, even after you said that you have. We'll let that waver on this occasion. If you think that Nathan's doing something wrong and you can defend Jeremy, why don't you come on and do it? Or are you just going to sit in chat and just keyboard warrior like you always do? Is there anybody else out there that wants to defend the requesting of information of children? Don't really see how that's plausible.
Okay, let's set the record straight. Riley, call me out. I am a member of Jim Discord.
Call you out?
Yeah, they say, oh, why don't you call Jose out? He's a member of the Jim Pandas Discord. So what?
Well, is he a member? Are you a member of the children thing that he's got the link on?
No, I'm a member of the Discord, and I jump in the debate, Flat Earth and more every once in a while, and I just chat with them. I listen to their claims. I listen to Kimo and David talking, and I comment every once in a while, and I just sit back and let them.
Oh, hello there. My name's Nathan Oakley, and I do live streams on YouTube, and I've come across quite a disturbing Discord server whereby a gentleman by the name of Jeremy Whartonby is gathering information about people's children and encouraging others to do the same, and I just don't really know what to do about that. Can you advise me?
Okay. Let me put you through to Crime Desk. I think they would be better advised than me.
Sorry, the crime
Just
desk.
a minute. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
One moment.
You are through to Warwickshire Police Central Crime Desk. Your call is important to us and will be answered as soon as possible. If your call is not related to reporting a crime, please dial 100 and ask the operator to direct the call to the appropriate department. If you are unable to wait, please call back later or contact Crime Desk via our website at www.warwickshire.police.uk. The reporting of a false crime is an offence which could lead to prosecution.
Please hold. You are at the head of the queue and will be connected as soon as possible.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!